Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Cloud Computing to Enhance Software Development Security, Risk Mitigation, and Cost Containment. This is the Unit LLC. My name is Leon Baptiste. I'm the CEO of the Unit LLC. As you all know, cloud computing is basically on-demand availability, systems resources, basically data storage without having the user into the direct management of such resources. It makes it easy, in other words. Regarding the other part of it, which is software development, the software development process, it's an ongoing process where that security portion is concerned, involving people, involving the practice, ensuring confidentiality, integrity, and availability of those resources. The Unit LLC has a plan to deal with the secure cloud computing architecture. The methodology is based on the best of the best, such as the Cloud Security Alliance version 4.0, the NIST Special Publication 500-299 regarding cloud computing security reference architecture, the Cloud Security Alliance version 3.0.1 regarding cloud security control matrix, and the NIST Special Publications 800-207 regarding zero trust architecture, adding the NIST Cybersecurity Framework version 1.1 from April 2018, and you have the best pillars of the cybersecurity community. And our methodology, you could say, is 200% vendor agnostic and well grounded in these pillars. Following will be two of our fantastic professionals, Mr. Robert Thomas, our Chief Intelligence and Information Officer, former military intelligence, Chief Warrant Officer, work at the NSA, the White House. What can we say about him? And Mr. Kevin Chile, did I say that? Chile,
there you go. You're good.
Appreciate it. Former MP, military police, and what I call the next wave of security experts with a very strong technology base. So, gentlemen, the floor is yours, please.
Okay, well, I'll start off. My name is Robert Thomas. As Leon introduced the topic, the goal of the conversation is to get you folks thinking about secure cloud computing architecture per se, as it impacts your business. If you're in the middle of a cloud migration right now, you're working in the federal or a regulated industry space, how do you maintain your compliance architecture, and how do you leverage the differences between doing your applications that support your business in the data center and then migrating some parts and pieces of those applications to the cloud, or migrating them to the cloud completely. So those are challenges. A lot of vendors who want to sell you those services will tell you, hey, it's great, it's cool, it's fast, it's easy, it's cheap. There's a variety of actual, a variety of actual data around those concepts. Everybody that I know in the industry who sells services says things are safer in the cloud, and that's always up in the air, depending on how you're doing it or what you're doing or not doing. Everybody says it's less expensive in the cloud, and it can be. I mean, it can be. You just have to know what you're doing, and you have to know why you're doing what you're doing. Nobody who's selling you something wants you to find a way to buy it from them less expensively. That's just human nature. So as your trusted security practitioner, our goal is to, number one, earn your trust by telling you that We are vendor agnostic. We have no dog in the fight. If you want to go into a Google Cloud environment, if you want to go into an Azure Cloud environment, if you want to go into Alibaba or something else, no problem. We'll be glad to help you. But we would give you advice to do it in a vendor agnostic way. I mean, each vendor has strengths and weaknesses from the cybersecurity perspective and from the business perspective. So, and we understand those strengths and weaknesses, and we want to help you get the best bang for your buck for your business and earn your trust. So as Leon said, what we call our secure cloud computing architecture methodology is based on what are currently the 5 big pillars of cloud cybersecurity. The obviously NIST, the national obviously NIST, and the Cloud Security Alliance, and some parts and pieces from OWASP thrown in there for web services security, and Oasis Open. So one moment. The folks on the phone who are listening from a regulated industry perspective, you're dealing with various compliance frameworks. You've been using them in your data center. You are either good at it or you're not. You outsource it or you don't. You insource it and your team is doing it on a regular basis. I mean, our secure cloud computing architecture methodology easily supports PCI DSS, HIPAA high trust type data, CGIS data from the Department of Justice for you folks in the state and municipal government spaces, CMMC and DFARS, and supports common compliance frameworks in the EU, the ANISA framework, legacy ISO 27001, and obviously NIST 853 and NIST 800-171, which is the functional backbone of all the current DFARS thinking and methodologies related to CUI, controlled unclassified information, which is the big concern from the DoD and the US government perspective for supply chain security at the moment. So what is that? What is it that we call this secure cloud computing architecture? From our perspective, the secure cloud computing architecture, the backbone of that is based on all these control frameworks, the best and brightest of those control frameworks. Each control framework has requirements, and a lot of these control frameworks have a huge amount of common requirements. So it's in your best interest in a regulated industry to understand if you have some HIPAA compliance requirements, some PCI DSS type compliance requirements, and some other customer requirements. If you can work with a vendor like the Unit LLC that can help you identify common compliance requirements across those frameworks and develop a single control to generate a single audit artifact one time, pay for it once and use it 3 or 4 times, it's in your best business interest to do that. Obviously, if you adopt this type of methodology, it'll allow you to buy once and use multiple times, save a considerable amount of labor, reduce a considerable amount of human error potentially by inadvertently generating multiple audit artifacts to satisfy the same basic compliance requirement. So these are tremendous value adds to any business. Pardon me. Kevin?
Yes.
Any comments from the business perspective?
Yeah. So I come with I guess a different flavor. Like Lee said, I'm an MP. So we used to call that multi-purpose, but also stands for military police. So I kind of entered the cyber space, if you will, through the mission assurance world, which used to be known as defense critical infrastructure protection. So basically it's those those critical infrastructure that we need to secure to complete the mission. So translated into business sense, what are those things that you absolutely have to accomplish your business goals? So obviously talking about that the piece that Robert just talked about, the compliance is huge. But there's a larger piece of it. The larger piece of it isn't just that you're, you're checking off the checklist to make sure that you're compliant. And that's obviously very important, but the larger piece of it is protecting your infrastructure, right? Protecting your data, making sure that it's secure. And then if we look at it, I always liked the term mission assurance, because what it did is it got the infrastructure protection out of the communications, the J6 as we would call it. So the comms realm. It combined that. It combined the security realm, physical security. It combined, the documentation and policy of that. It decomposed the actual business objectives down into those critical nodes so that you could identify them, prioritize them, and protect them. So this is an exciting piece for me as the military policeman in the room, because it really does speak to the larger goal of securing and protecting your your infrastructure that allows you to do your job, to do your whatever it is you're doing and selling. It allows you to protect it. So I like that piece quite a bit. So I guess the other thing that the unit brings to the table is that operational this is another military word, and I apologize. It's in my blood, but operationalization, which I don't know if it's even a word, but the Army likes to use it. So basically, we want to take all of this compliance work that we're going to do, we're going to package it together and make it easier for the client. But then we're going to also focus on how do we now make this a living thing that doesn't just happen on the outside. It needs to be part of your organization, and it needs to have leadership buy-in. It needs to incorporate user training. So there's a lot of things in there that we can help you to wrap it up into an easy to use, procedure policy.
Absolutely. So the primary topic of this conversation was related to secure software development. So there are those out there who work in that space every day. So so getting back to that topic, now that we've talked about compliance and security, what does that mean? I mean, what does that mean to you as a business person? Obviously, if you are involved in software development in any way, shape, or form, you must think it's a key component of something that differentiates you from other customers, to put a large investment in software development. Software development requires, to do it right, requires what you would call a pipeline process. You have software developers who develop things. You have people who monitor the software development process from a leadership perspective and make sure that the T's are crossed and I's are dotted. You have sales department that talks to your customers, and customers give you feedback on the current state of the product, and what it does, what it doesn't do, what they'd like it to do better. You have folks involved in quality assurance of the software development product. You have folks involved in security within the software development product to make sure that it doesn't, quote unquote, leak stuff. So software development from a business perspective, you probably have a lot of intellectual property and or trade secrets wrapped up in your software development efforts. And your risk is, where does that stuff live in your data center, in your business? Who has access to it? Who should have access to it? Who shouldn't have access to it? And how do you control it to make sure that it doesn't leave your business and inadvertently go to your competitors? I mean, I've been in the security game for a long time, 23 years with the US government, and then quite a while now in the private sector. And I've actually only, unfortunately or fortunately, been involved in an intellectual property crime with one company. And it was very, very interesting the way that we stumbled on the fact that our intellectual property was being emailed to our competitor. I mean, literally, our competitor, one of our competitor's employees, we hired them. They were an employee in our R&D center, and they were taking our computer ASIC chip designs, Mentor graphic wireframe diagrams, renaming them myresume.doc and emailing them outside of the company. So I had recently been, recently retired from the military after a couple of tours at the National Security Agency in Washington, D.C., where we had some very sophisticated data control technologies. So I actually convinced the corporation to remove our tier 1 firewalls and install these devices, which was a 7-layer, I'm going to get stupidly technical now, a 7-layer application gateway. Basically, when email attachments were trying to leave the company, this device would stop them, rip the attachment off, open the attachment at the bit level, and make sure that it was what it was. It would do a lot of keyword searching, a lot of data inspection, and make sure that it was either real or Memorex, for those of you old enough to remember those commercials. So unfortunately, we did find this gentleman emailing and we were doing basic computer chip research and development for some very, very big vendors. So couldn't allow that, and caught him, called some folks with the guns and the badges, and had him perp walk through the first floor R&D center as a reminder to everybody that, this is a real deal. So what does that mean to you from a software development perspective? So recently we worked with a customer, a defense contractor, who had an enormous software development program. Their problem was, and these are strict business problems, so I'm going to stop using the term there. There's always an arms race between your ability to give the software development personnel adequate horsepower to develop software on the desktop form factor. It is an arms race. Those of you who are buying hardware to support your software development teams, you know this. This is one area in my experience from both the business perspective and the cybersecurity, intellectual property, and trade secret protection perspective, where the cloud, quote unquote, really truly shines. I mean, as an example, I'm going to use some vendor examples that I'm very familiar with just to move the conversation along. I'm not endorsing these vendors per se. But if you have a small or a large software development team, you're trying to buy adequate hardware for each software developer's desktop. This is an ongoing problem. It's incredibly expensive. Your network backbone has to be beefed up to move these large software development files from the developers to the QA staff to whatever is in your pipeline process. Automated testing, all these things consume network resources. So your network team is probably spending a lot of money trying to beef up the network to support this. Your QA department needs adequate desktop horsepower to do this. Your developers need an increasing amount of hardware and horsepower to do this. And your pipeline support tools, I'm going to use one vendor's name here, Atlassian, the Atlassian suite, Jira, Confluence, all those tools. You're making investments in those in your data center that you may or may not be aware of. And since these costs are among multiple departments, you don't see those costs probably as an overarching cost. And you might want to take a look at that. So as an example, if we were to help you move some parts and pieces of your pipeline process to the cloud, these are some of the things that you could expect. We could, as an example, you could move your software developers' desktop development environment completely to the cloud. And the value out of that is each developer would have their own environment in the cloud with literally unlimited resources. So you would not have to buy, own, have a maintenance contract for, and buy desktop software that would not be utilized 16 hours a day and stick it on somebody's desktop. You could create the perfectly beefed up, unlimited resource software development desktop environment in the cloud that you would only pay for while the developer was working. If the developer came in at 9 a.m., logged into the cloud, started work, the cloud would start auto-generating capacity to support your developer. And then when the developer went to lunch, you would stop paying. When the developer came back from lunch, he'd go back to work, auto-generate, auto-consume resources, and you'd start paying again. The developer would go home at night and you would stop paying. So you would stop paying for those 16 hours a day. So that's the value, that's part of the value proposition, but only part of it. The other thing is, if the developers are working in what I'm going to call a secure cloud environment, using the secure cloud computing architecture model that the unit is proposing, you would not have the concerns that you have today with intellectual property and trade secret and source code control, because you could ensure that that source code never left your cloud secure environment unless you wanted it to. Imagine 10 software developers, 10 different software development environments in the cloud, supported by the cloud-based pipeline processes and tools in that Atlassian suite, as an example. Jira, Confluence, Bitbucket, whatever you're using as an automated testing tool, all those things in the cloud, and data is not, information and source code cannot come back to your premise. Imagine, even if you're completely remote now, your developer logs into the cloud from home, his environment starts to consume resources. He's amazed, that person is amazingly productive because of the infinite amount of resources, but that person from home cannot move the source code out of the cloud. Can't be done. I mean, you don't have that kind of control in your data center unless you have some amazingly sophisticated resources.
And Robert, if I might add also something very simple, but everybody should know, you can have either a single organization cloud, which is basically an enterprise cloud, or multiple organizations cloud, a public cloud. An example of such is Google, Amazon. For the bigger companies, the bigger corporations, a single organization cloud, an enterprise cloud, might be a little more suitable. But if you're looking to cut costs, keep it at the minimum, a small business, utilizing a public cloud with a good system makes perfect sense.
Absolutely, absolutely. The value. This is one of the areas where an investment in the cloud environment really shines. If you are a DFARS controlled, or I'm sorry, if you're a small or mid-sized business and you're dealing with DFARS compliance, this is also a value add. But it's an interesting concept. I've actually helped a couple of companies put this in place with a massive risk reduction. The CEO, the board, the CIO, everybody sleeps better at night knowing that the source code is locked up tight as a drum. Actually, we worked with a company that had their software development off Oconus in India, 35 different software development teams using this architecture and methodology with complete source code control across 35 different teams, Oconus, and the ability to monitor and report in real time on code in the pipeline process to ensure that the code did not leak. It couldn't be pulled out of those development environments. Every environment was being funded in a pay by the drink kind of methodology. Reduced a lot of concern, a lot of churn from investors, from the board, from the executive staff. It's something that you don't see a lot in the press these days, which is always interesting. I don't know why, but if it's a concern for you, we're certainly here to help. Any comments, Kevin? Or
I'll throw the business look on this, and I like it because this is a fun conversation, because we talk about securing your environment, right? We also talk about reducing costs, and we also talk about increasing security. So it's a beautiful thing, because you're looking at making your business processes more lean, more secured, and more cost effective. So I really love this. I love this topic because it allows it also allows buy-in. If you're sitting here watching this and you're thinking, wow, I would love to do this, but I'm just the communications guy, this translates across echelons of business, because it talks about security, It talks about compliance. It talks about business continuity and reduce costs. Who doesn't love any of those? So that's my 2 cents.
I agree wholeheartedly, gentlemen. As I said, the key is having a secure, integrated approach to dealing with your information. We've all seen the latest, well, I'll say over the last few years, cyber attacks on almost every single infrastructure you could think about, private and public sector. DoD, still remember some major corporations such as Sony, for example. So it is imperative. There's a saying among cyber warriors that corporations tend to spend more on coffee than on cybersecurity, which is funny. And it's sad, but it's a reality. It actually happens that way.
That's an old school way of thought, though, wouldn't you say, Lee? Because I mean, now, it used to be like, oh, I have a guy that does that. Now it needs to be, it needs to be throughout your organization with leadership buy-in. Everyone's thinking it. That's the new norm, or at least we're here to help people get to that being the new norm.
Well, everybody has to have be conscientious of such and take it, don't things for granted, because trust me, nation states and individual hackers are not taking it for granted. So, gentlemen, any other comment regarding this? We appreciate your time, ladies and gentlemen. Regarding our next webinar, we'll be talking about the compliance system, the cyber compliance protocols that is a must. Keep in mind, it doesn't matter if you're a small bakery selling baked goods to a military post. Anyone involved with the federal government, starting, I'd say, the fiscal year of 2021, roughly, as far as we know right now, will have to be compliant in at least level 1. Everyone, everybody, and it's something that individuals seem to have either forgotten or not paid very close attention to such. So we will be bringing a webinar regarding such within the next couple of weeks. Soon. Thank you very much for your time, and be safe.
Thanks, Leon.
Thanks, Lee. Take care, everyone.
Take care.
Yeah, thank you.